heavy machinery from ancient times. Ancient societies had access to high technology, and as an example to support this assumption, we recall today an interesting gold object that was discovered in Panama in the 1920s. At first, the object known as the bulldozer, or zoomorphic pendant from Panama, attracted very little attention. It has been hailed as nothing more than another Jaguar model. However, it was soon suggested that this might be a design for a heavy construction machine, such as a steam shovel-like excavator. Suppose for a moment that the object is an animal, but why is it so flat and angular? The Jaguar's tail appears to be exceptionally strong and has two large cogwheels at the end. This artifact is only 4.5 inches long. However, it is covered with various mechanical devices. This prehistoric machine with claws and legs, shovels, and a chain mechanism attached to cogwheels at its end, if built on a large scale, could be used as an earth-moving excavator. Was this zoomorphic pendant from Panama created as a reminder of what the ancients once saw? Ancient jade table set. This set was discovered in the 20th century by an expedition led by Elias Sotomayor. These had 12 bowls of small size, but they all have the same size and volume of liquid. In addition to these 12 identical bowls, there is one large bowl in the set, which will fill completely perfectly to the brim in case you pour liquid from 12 small bowls. It all sounds strange, as if the service was created for some kind of rituals. The material of all bowls from the set is jade, which is a difficult material to process. By the way, for comparison, jade has approximately the same strength on the Mohs scale as granite, 6-7. Looking at the bowls, one gets the impression of the work of the machine or some unknown technology. The very first coins of Southeast Asia. In 1998, a diver near Indonesia accidentally discovered the remains of an ancient Arab ship, the Dhow. Thanks to this find, scientists gained new knowledge about the early trade routes. In subsequent years, archaeologists traced from the bottom about 60,000 undamaged ceramic objects with a total weight of 25 tons. The finds testify to the longest sea route that mankind used even before European expansion in the 17th century. In addition, archaeologists have also found a single golden piloncito in the wreckage. Piloncito in Spanish means lightweight. It is the earliest form of precious metal currency in the islands of Southeast Asia. These small engraved coins, composed of locally produced metal, weighed between 0.5 and 3 grams of high-quality gold. Since the coin almost certainly comes from Indonesia, this discovery tells of the early trade routes along the Silk Road that connected the Indonesian kingdoms and the early Arab states. Neanderthals with bullet holes. People who appeared at some point in history on planet Earth destroyed the Neanderthals, arranging genocide against this ancient earthly race and as a result completely exterminating it. In fact, it was the invasion of people and the capture of the planet. The number of facts, archaeological, scientific, historical, and medical, has already passed the point to which it was possible to tell people fairy tales about Darwin's theory. Over this theory, now even scientists are not afraid to laugh quite openly. The fact that people are completely unadapted to life on this planet has never been refuted by scientists. It was simply not advertised. But then the question arises, if man is not the root race of the Earth, then where did they come from? Scientists had previously laughed at theories about the mating of people with Neanderthals in order to create a hybrid race and obtain from the indigenous people DNA that allows them to earthly conditions. Now they themselves say and write many articles that yes, people mated with Neanderthals, and as a result of this mating, we received in fact the keys to the earth. Each of us has a piece of the Neanderthal genetic code, which allowed people to live on a new planet. It was not just a genocide with the extermination of the indigenous race of the earth, it was a very technological and thoughtful action. I want to tell you about Neanderthal skulls with bullet holes. Yes, with bullet holes in the temple area. In 1921, a Swiss miner named Tom Zwigler made a scientific discovery while working in a zinc mine in present-day Zambia. At a depth of about 18 meters, Zwigler removed the skull of an early hominid, the upper jaw, and some other bone fragments from the ground. Named after the place where it was found, the Broken Hill skull provided the first evidence of a primitive human species called Homo rhodesiensis, Rhodesian man. The skull is believed to be between 125,000 and 300,000 years old and is currently on display at the Natural History Museum in London. But there is more to the skull than meets the eye. There is a small round hole on the left temporal bone, which according to forensics could only be caused by a projectile flying at high speed. On the opposite side, the parietal plate is shattered from the inside. This suggests that what entered the ancient man's head entered through the left side of his head, retaining enough force to break the bone on the opposite side. Undoubtedly, it was a fatal blow, but how was it done? A clean round hole suggests a small and very fast projectile. As the forensic experts noted, it fits the parameters of the holes in the skull, a bullet. In fact, the ancient skull shows the same damage as the victims of the gunshot wound. The skull itself belongs to a hominid that predates modern times. The evidence is contrary to traditional archaeology, and the only explanation would be to the detriment of accepted scientific paradigms. If this skull were the only one of its kind, its unusual hole could be explained as the result of the influence of an unknown force. But this is not the only such artifact. On the other side of the world, in the Lena River Valley in Russia, archaeological excavations have unearthed a skull of an extinct type of cattle called aurochs. This wild bull first appeared 2 million years ago and died out about 4,000 years ago. Even though it comes from an older period, this skull has a hole of the same type as that found in Zambia. The bone tissue around the hole is calcified, suggesting that the animal survived the shot. Cookware with 300 years of history. On the sea voyage with your own set. Apparently, 300 years ago they had no idea about traveling light. Moreover, only a wealthy person could afford to grab a couple of extra plates, and he did. The found items have several identification marks, 3 hallmarks, the inscription Henrik Lefrensen and the date 1694. 2 hallmarks indicate the material, tin, and the third, the coat of arms, more precisely a small circle in which if you look closely, you can see the image of a 2-headed eagle. But this is not the coat of arms of Russia, as many might think. The 2-headed eagle, rather, speaks of Austrian origin. Judging by the surviving list of passengers, the dishes belong to a wealthy Caesarean Austrian named Hitler. In the wreckage of a merchant ship, and 3 spoons were found for different types of dishes. Probably the owner carried the entire set with him, but it was not possible to establish exactly how many details were there. The Archangel Raffle belonged to the Dutch merchant Herman Meyer. In October 1724, the ship sailed from St. Petersburg to Lubeck. According to the declaration of the port customs, it transported a minor cargo: lard, matting, linen yarn, and linen. A month and a half later, the sailboat got into freeze-up, was abandoned by the crew, and crushed by the ice. An ancient animal of schizophrenic appearance. Mesozoic is certainly cool, but what about the present deep past of the Earth? 500 million years ago, our planet was so different that we would not recognize it. Yes, and life was then completely different. The land was a lifeless wasteland, and something like this was found in the oceans. Meet Opabinia, one of the countless strange creatures that lived in the distant Cambrian period. Then there were no standards of organism building, so everyone cut their bodies anyhow. As you may have guessed, our goal also decided to be original. Let's start with the fact that it was an arthropod. Only the arthropod so strange that its first reconstructions caused only nervous laughter from scientists. Understanding the basics of a 3-10-centimeter animal based on the prints of their bodies on ancient pebbles for paleontologists was another torment. Opibenia was found at the beginning of the 20th century. Then scientists had no idea how ridiculous the creatures of antiquity could be, which is why the body of our girl shocked them. The entire body of the creature was divided into 19 segments. The first included a mouth, 5 different sized eyes, and a long limb, consisting of a hose from a vacuum cleaner with a spiked claw attached to it. Immediately behind the improvised head stretched monotonous segments of the body. Each of them had a pair of gills. The carcass was protected by a shell of an unknown material. Moreover, this shell served not only as armor, but also as fins. Animal was not very smart. Her interests included only 2 things: to find food at the bottom and to find a prettier representative of the opposite sex. But it is to this stupidity that we owe one of the largest scientific discoveries. For a long time, scientists could not understand why did all groups of animals, from arthropods to chordates, appear almost simultaneously within just 20 million years, and only the armor of Opibenia helped to ask the right question. What if animals existed before but were without hard covers and their remains simply did not survive in the breed? Figurine with a steel ball inside. In the 1980s, the Italian geologist Angelo Pittoni was in charge of diamond mining in the Republic of Sierra Leone. In the course of work in rock layers about 17,000 years old, Pittoni found several stone figures depicting anthropomorphic reptilians, some of them in the form of giant riders sat on elephants. There was something in one of the figurines. X-ray showed that in the lower part of the figurine there is a cavity in which, like in a rattle, a small black ball rolls. When it was removed, it turned out that the ball was made of chrome steel. The artifact is not recognized as authentic to this day. The fresco confirmed the legend of the Maya. Archaeologists, while conducting research in Mexico, discovered a fresco about 2,500 years old on the territory of the ancient city of Calakmul, which depicts a representative of the Mayan people selling salt. So far, only circumstantial evidence has indicated this. Firstly, there are oral stories that the Maya mined salt on an almost industrial scale, which helped them preserve food for a long time. For example, the Maya baked salted cakes, used salt to dry meat and fish. Undoubtedly, the reserves of provisions helped these people to successfully carry out their military campaigns. Secondly, legends say that the Maya actively traded in salt. It was a hot commodity that was often exchanged for another commodity. In fact, salt in the conditions of natural exchange at times was a fairly hard currency. In 2004, a group of archaeologists from the University of Louisiana excavated in Belize for the first time, discovered traces of Mayan salt production. Then the remains of ancient buildings were found in the mangrove forest. Since then, archaeologists have mapped some 70 salt-producing sites, including a large salt factory at Pines Creek. But only now has direct confirmation been received that the Maya traded salt. According to researchers, the discovered ancient fresco depicts a fragment of everyday life. Piltdown fly. If you look closely at the piece of Baltic amber in this photo, you can see a perfectly preserved fly inside. This specimen is kept in the London Natural History Museum. It is dated to the Eocene, about 38 million years, and is an absolutely unique fossil, not only because there is no other such find, but also because there are very few fossilized flies in general. Insects are rather poorly preserved. Many microscopes use incandescent light bulbs in their lighting system, and some metal parts of the instrument get hot enough over long hours to fry eggs. As a rule, such parts are more dangerous for the scientists themselves than for their stone objects of study, but not in the case of amber. The priceless specimen is cracked. Frustrated and frightened, the researcher began to examine the crack and noticed a strange feature. The crack was too smooth. Upon further study, it turned out that a piece of amber consisted of two parts glued with resin, in the cavity between which a completely modern fly was laid. The story made it to the press, and the pseudo-fossil was quickly dubbed the Piltdown fly, after the Piltdown man. Another famous fossil fake, hominid fossil, of the early 20th century. Who faked the fly remains a mystery. The Piltdown fly has been fooling scientists for nearly 150 years, more than any other fake fossil in the history of science. Globe from Lamana. In 1984, a cave was found in Ecuador during gold mining, in which more than 300 objects were found that did not correspond to the culture of the pre-Columbian era. These objects have nothing to do with the pre-Columbian culture found in these places. Most likely they're much older than it, therefore their age may be at least 6,000 years. One of them was a 350 kilograms granite stone on which a map of the world was engraved from the North to the South Pole. Italy, Greece, the Mediterranean Sea are distinguished on this map. However, where Japan and Taiwan are now located, a long continent extends from Sakhalin to Taiwan. India is much larger than today. The entire map is crossed by a wide quartz line starting in the Middle East. In the Atlantic Ocean, it crosses a continent that does not exist today. Perhaps this is Atlantis. If you are guided by the outlines of the continents when dating, then this map should be at least 13,000 years old. Why did humanity put so much effort into erasing its true history? I think the answer lies on the surface. We, people, are not the indigenous inhabitants of the planet Earth. Perhaps we are invaders, enslavers, colonialists who have captured it. Subscribe to the channel and leave your thumbs up. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!